Hello and welcome to my presentation. My name is Sarah Moore and I'm a first year PhD candidate at UCL and I'm very excited to be part of this online conference. This presentation will be about mnemonic sites and how they help to influence notions of national identity within Bosnia, specifically for the Bosniak and Serbian communities. This presentation will look at two examples of mnemonic sites, the Potocari-Srebrenica Memorial Complex and Kravica, and looking at how they represent contested memories and narratives, as well as providing physical rallying points for members of the Bosniak and Serbian communities to unite behind. To give a little context, the Serbian nation were victims of genocide at the hands of the Croatian Ustaše during the Second World War, and this feeds into a historical narrative of suffering and threat of extermination at the hands of foreign powers, going back to 1389 in the Battle of Kosovo-Polje. This was also relevant during the Bosnian War in the 1990s, as the Serbs viewed the war as an act of defence, defending the Serb nation from a perceived threat of genocide, and wishing to create a greater Serbia to not only protect the Serbs all over the Yugoslavia, but also to ensure and promote the idea of Serbs being the dominant entity. However, Croats and Bosniaks viewed the Bosnian War as an act of aggression by the Bosnian Serb army, marking the start of the contested nature of the Bosnian War. The focus of this presentation will be on the memorials at Srebrenica and Kravica, as they are a good example of how contested memories and narratives interplay with one another. Over 8,000 men and boys were killed during the Srebrenica genocide in July 1995, and over 40,000 Bosniak civilians in the enclave were removed to Bosniak-held territory. Today the town is largely Bosnian Serb, though there are some Bosniak returnees. Srebrenica is in the Republika Srpska, which is an entity established through the Dayton Peace Accords, which many feel legitimised the ethnic cleansing as perpetrated by the Serbs. Despite rulings of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, and the broadcast of footage such as the Scorpions video detailing atrocities committed by the Bosnian Serb army, Serbia and Republika Srpska refused to acknowledge Srebrenica as a genocide, although in 2010 a declaration was signed by the Serbian government acknowledging that a terrible crime had taken place at Srebrenica, but did not go as far to agree that a genocide had taken place. Acknowledging Srebrenica as a genocide would contradict the Serbian nationalistic narrative, which portrays Serbs as acting defensively during the Bosnian War. Through various forms of denial and relativising the events of the Bosnian War, and in particular Srebrenica, the topic is contested among the three main entities, as there is no single narrative of the Bosnian War accepted by all, nor any enforced by the outcome of the Dayton Peace Agreements. The need to memorialise the past, in particular the Bosnian War, is very strong within the country. Often memorials feature symbols of national identity, such as religious symbols, emblems, and use of language or written script, which distinguishes itself from neighbouring entities and of course promotes itself. By erecting memorials, they can be viewed as physical manifestations of identity, and even territorial markers, signalling that the area belongs to a certain entity or once belonged to a community that is no longer present due to the events of the past. For example, the Kravica monument is exclusively Serbian and is a prominent memorial in Republika Srpska, whereas the Potocari-Srebrenica Memorial Complex is a reminder that a strong Bosniak community once lived there, and perhaps reminds some of how the Republika Srpska came to be established there. The arrangement of the Dayton Peace Accords and its aims to appease all sides involved meant that no one entity was victorious or defeated, nor was a sole narrative imposed in Bosnia which would then dictate the course of how memory narratives would be constructed post-war. Therefore, four ethno-narratives exist in Bosnia: Bosniak, Serbian, Croatian, and Bosnian, which seeks to encompass all citizens. Often these ethno-narratives oppose one another and offer a version of the past, which promotes itself and accuses other entities of crimes against their entity. This was also a familiar pattern in remembrance of the Second World War after Tito's death in 1980. Because brotherhood and unity was no longer used to unite Yugoslavs and to forget about the crimes committed during the Second World War, suppressed memories resurfaced, which resulted in the rise of militant nationalisms and led to the nationalism seen in the late 1980s and in the wars of the Yugoslav succession. Through memorialization, post-Yugoslav states are establishing the foundations of their newly independent states, in this case the Federation of Bosnia and Republika Srpska. Just to give of the region. You can see in the top map the country of Bosnia, and in the bottom it shows the locations of Srebrenica, and you can also see Kravica, which is close to Bratunac. And Srebrenica and this whole region was largely Bosniak dominated before the war, and because of its proximity to the Serbian border, it was a target for the Bosnian Serb army trying to establish a continuous Serb state or Greater Serbia. And also you will see how close Bratunac and Srebrenica are, which makes the two memorials featured in this presentation close together and representing a contested memory of that particular region's history and also the nation's history. The Potocari-Srebrenica Memorial Complex is at the former Dutch base where many of Srebrenica's civilians flocked to in July 1995, seeking the protection and safety of the UN. Now it is the burial site of many of the Srebrenica genocide victims. It has an exhibition centre and a room for prayer and reflection. The commemorations for this take place on the 11th of July, the day that the Bosnian Serb army overrun Srebrenica, and in effect the genocide and removal of the population commenced. The memorial complex was the idea of Lord Paddy Ashdown, the former UN High Representative for Bosnia, who sought international funding and worked with local mnemonic groups such as Mothers of Srebrenica to create a memorial there of the victims of the genocide. It was opened in 2003 by Bill Clinton, and commemorations each year often include speeches by international leaders, religious and national. The focus of the commemorations are the reburial of the newly identified victims, but we could argue that the international nature of the events detracts attention away from the act of remembering the genocide. Furthermore, because Srebrenica has come to take on a wider and central meaning within post-state and Bosniak identity, many Bosniaks attend the commemorations in a manner akin to pilgrimages. They feel it is important to visit and pay respects to those killed, and an event which has since been used to help define post-war Bosnia and the worst atrocity committed on European soil since the Second World War. For Bosniaks, it is also a public reminder of the brutality they suffered at the hands of the Bosnian Serb army during the Bosnian War. Souvenirs are often for sale and purchase, which certainly can be seen as controversial, as well as conforming to notions of genocide tourism. Here is a picture of the memorial complex, and you can see the many white grave markers, the visitor space which you'll see on the right hand side of the picture, and how this just to remember, this mnemonic site is within the Republika Srpska and is the biggest Bosniak memorial within that entity. The process of erecting memorials to Bosniak victims can be difficult in Republika Srpska due to the lack of support. Even at a Moscow, a number of factors have prevented official memorials being erected there, as it is conflicting with the interests of Mittal Steel, who own the mine, and also the interests of Republika Srpska, who would be admitting and acknowledging the atrocities by allowing such a mnemonic space to be established. Therefore, Srebrenica is unique because it is of its international involvement and visitors, as well as it being allowed in Republika Srpska. However, the Kravica monument was built in 2002, memorialising all Serbs in the region who died during the Bosnian War and the Second World War, which again presents this sense of historical continuity of suffering. The monument can be seen as a response to plans to erect a memorial for the Srebrenica genocide. Kravica is only around 20 kilometres from the Potocari Memorial Complex, and it can be seen as an attempt to equate the suffering experienced at Srebrenica with that of Serb suffering in the region also. Kravica is the site of a massacre at Serbian Christmas by local Bosniak forces, headed by Nasa Oric from Srebrenica in January 1993. This massacre of 46 Serb soldiers and civilians was often cited by military leaders, especially Mladic, in justifying the bombardment of Srebrenica from 1993, and ultimately the overrunning of the town in July 1995. The commemorations at Kravica take place on the 12th of July, the day after events take place at Potocari. The 12th of July is a holy day within the Orthodox calendar, and also the day on which Mladic entered Srebrenica in 1995 and gifted the town to the Serbs as a revenge for the quashing of the Serbian uprising in 1804, among other reasons. Annual commemorations feature predominantly Serbs, mainly Bosnian Serbs, but also nationalistic Serbs from Serbia proper. Religious, political and social leaders often make speeches, and the day chosen links history and religion exclusive to Serbian notions of identity. Kravica has seemingly replaced the nearby Bratunac Memorial in being the prime mnemonic site for Bosnian Serbs. Bratunac Memorial was built to remember the Serb victims of the Second World War and was built during the Yugoslav era. But perhaps it is this link and connotations with Yugoslavia that has resulted in its abandonment. Republika Srpska and Bosnian Serb leaders are perhaps trying to move away from Yugoslavia and its associated narratives and establish their own post-Yugoslav and post-war and forge their own physical landscapes of memory. And locally, Kravica is a significant place as it was the site of an atrocity deemed a legitimate military operation by the International Criminal Tribunal for Yugoslavia, but regarded as an atrocity and a war crime by many Serbs. Kravica can be seen as an alternative monument as it mirrors Srebrenica, the site of an atrocity during the Bosnian War, memorialised and elevated to functioning as a site contributing to a wider national perception of identity. The picture of the monument, you can see that it's a huge cross which is a link to the Orthodox faith. There is Cyrillic script and the coat of arms, which is a Serbian eagle, a white double-headed eagle, and the Serbian cross with the 4 fire striker shapes, which have been interpreted as 4 Cyrillic letter S's, which stand for the slogan, "Only unity saves the Serbs." All of these national symbols and motives definitely mark the site as exclusively Serbian, and thus can be seen as a symbol of Republika Srpska and as an established and official Serbian entity within Bosnia-Herzegovina. In contrast, there are few Islamic symbols featured at Potocari, except for the use of colour green for the coffins awaiting burial, and Arabic script written on the grave markers, and of course, relatives of loved ones praying when they are visiting graves. So, to conclude, this presentation has given an example of a memorial and an alternate memorial which exemplifies the existence of competing narratives and memories within Bosnia. Because the Dayton Peace Agreement aimed to appease all sides, no one was victorious or defeated, and no sole narrative was imposed upon Bosnia, which allowed the existence of competing narratives, and in Bosnia there are 4 main ones. These memories often form an integral part of post-conflict national identity, as similar shared experiences help to unite members of a social or ethnic group. In this case, the genocide at Srebrenica has taken on a wider meaning to which most, if not all, Bosniaks can attribute or relate to, and that is suffering from Serbian brutality during the war. Likewise, Serb nationalists view atrocities committed against them during the Bosnian War as a continuation of historic persecution at the hands of foreign powers, such as the Ustaše during the Second World War, and thus memorials dedicated to Serb victims often present this continuation by marking both periods in one monument, for example at Kravica. Memorials serve as identity and even territorial markers. They can remind of a community that once existed in a region and of the crime which resulted in the populations not being as strong or numerous in that region. Mnemonic sites can also enforce the idea that a certain area belongs to a specific group, by using national symbols and references to factors which distinguish that from groups from others, such as religion or language. Some memorials can be seen as alternate because they was built in response to or presents an alternative narrative offered by another, often nearby, mnemonic space. For example, Kravica being built and established as a response to the international funding and interest in creating a memorial dedicated to the Srebrenica genocide. These alternate memorials often appear more nationalistic through the display of national symbols and present a narrative which often juxtaposes with the memorial it responds to. Thank you very much for listening, and if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them for you.